And they said, we're just going to say that you don't work with black leadership. And I said, well, you go ahead and say that, but we do work with black leadership. All of these grandmas and grandpas and black pastors who are working with us for months while you weren't here, those are black leaders, and they're recognized as black leaders by their community. But in fact, you're not a black leader, and really you only have white liberals and academics supporting you, and the black community isn't supporting you for the most part. And so that became a very controversial stance. And then as residents began, it was going to be the largest use of eminent domain in this nation's history for private commercial development against the Ninth Ward residents, who were all homeowners. And I said, wait a minute, what is this going to do to private property rights? And then all my funders said, wait a minute, don't talk about private property rights. And I said, well, wait a minute, I believe in private property rights, man. Like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then I started to realize that I wanted to help people, and I thought the way to help people was to help the left. But really, I wasn't such a leftist after all, you know? I just wanted to help people. Thank you. But here's the thing. Here's what ends up happening. This police officer named John Bryson, he began to work with me and say, hey, why don't you let us help you help people? And I said, man, I don't want to work with you. And he was like, well, I don't really like you either, Brandon. And I was like, well, fine. He said, but I do want to help my community, and you're helping my community, so let's work together. We ended up working together, and through helping people who were homeowners who wanted to help themselves, and through just helping them out, what happened was John Bryson became a person to me. He became humanized. He was no longer a dehumanized pig, as the left had, that dehumanization that Anita so eloquently spoke of, you know, that anyone who's patriotic or believes in our system or believes in our way, our America, is a racist pig, you know? And he wasn't dehumanized anymore. And so then when people would talk about, like, well, the pigs, and I'd say, wait a minute, man, like, you're not considering their perspective, you know? And they said, well, so next thing you know, I was like, I'm very frustrated. I could tell you all about getting invited to Venezuela and spending a month there, but I'm not going to. I have, however, told the FBI and the State Department all about my experiences. So I guess I was, in a weird way, I was a de facto spy, because I didn't realize at the time that everything I was learning, I was going to convey to the people in my nation who keep us safe. You know, I was going to convey that Medea Benjamin and Code Pink through this organization called Global Exchange. Actually, the people they salary in that nation, who are Venezuelans, are also the people who the government of Venezuela uses to arm the people in the barrios, the guerrilla movements. But that's an American nonprofit paying their salaries, you know? And that someone working with them is also, you know, the American connection who's on their salary, who's salaried by them, is also the American connection for Assata Shakur, and they relay information from Cuba to the US between the peace and justice community. I mean, I could go on, and I did go on when I met with law enforcement and the State Department. But for the sake of today, I'm not going to do that. So basically what ended up occurring is I started to get away from that time in my life. But because I had been so radical, and because I had made such a reputation, as I moved away and went back to Texas and got a couple of acres, you know, started just trying to plant a garden, I was having some pretty bad stress problems from what I had experienced, you know? And I just wasn't fitting in. Society didn't seem right. I felt like everything I had really believed in was not, it didn't, when it actually was time to do something about stuff, it didn't work, you know? It didn't work. Because I tell you what, we had months and months and months with no government in New Orleans and in the Ninth Ward. And the most brilliant minds of the left from all over the world came and tried to help us set up. We thought we had a resistance movement, you know? That's what we thought. We were wrong, and we didn't do anything better. We couldn't institutionalize anything. Like, we have systems of checks and balances that don't work great, but we have them. You know, we steady have them in this country. We couldn't institutionalize anything. If me and the other leaders left for 3 days, they would have a banana republic and throw a coup, and then it was horrible. We couldn't institutionalize anything. And I began to realize, like, hey, wait a minute, there's something about a system where there's institutional checks and balances and there's stability. And so I began to really look at things very differently, and I began to look at police differently, and I began to recognize that people who were patriotic and served our country in law enforcement were not pigs at all. And I began to realize, and you know what else? I began to realize something. I began to realize that much of what I had believed was utterly false. And I also began to realize that all those groups who were aid organizations and relief organizations from around the world, you know, they had different intention. And there's a reason the FBI pays attention to them. There's a reason they do. There's a reason when they say that, hey, we're care and our rights are, it's like, no, your rights aren't violated. You're funding the killing of Israeli children. Screw you, man. Thank you. Oh, but wait. Here's the thing, is it gets more intense than that. So I go away, but these groups start, like, they continue to call me and let me know what they're doing. And I'm like, dude, and at this point I'm hurt, I'm bitter, I feel betrayed by all my friends. I feel utterly betrayed. I said, man, I spent years working for the National Coalition to Free the Angola Three, only to find out this guy was in prison for killing people, and he wasn't exonerated for political crimes. And he didn't go to prison because he was an activist. He went to prison for beating people over the head with guns and stealing money. He was an armed robber, And I'm like, I felt really betrayed, and I felt just utterly confused. So that's happening, and then this Palestinian man approaches me, who I had known, and he ran the largest Palestinian nonprofit in the U.S., and it was the Palestinian Children's Welfare Fund, and his name's Riyad Hamad. His name was Riyad Hamad. And he approached me about a plan, and I didn't tell on him right away. I felt torn because you did not talk to the FBI, ever, You never would. That was so ingrained my entire life, or my entire activist life. And at some point, I realized that he was indeed going through with his plan to send money, to take money out of his nonprofit and send it through back channels to fund blowing up Israeli civilians. And I decided I was going to stop that. So I went to the FBI. I was scared. I was scared to go to the FBI, but I went to the FBI anyways, and I told them what I knew. And they said, well, Mr. Darby, to be honest, we're really surprised that you're telling us this. And I said, well, you shouldn't be, There you go. So I went about my business, and then I got a phone call, and they said, Brandon Darby. And I was like, hello? I was really scared, And they said, we need your help with something. And so long story short, the guy got in trouble. It turns out what I was saying was true. And he decided to kill himself.